Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining today's webinar around Ribbon Connect for Microsoft Teams Direct Routing. Today, we aim to show you how partners can benefit from Ribbon's new as-a-service offering to add enterprise voice to Microsoft Teams. So my name is Daniel Shepherd. I'm Techland's Business Development Manager. Talking us through today's presentation, we've got Kevin Baines, which is Ribbon's Head of Channel and Distribution for EMEA, and Greg Swede, who's Ribbon's Director for Solutions Marketing, as well as Techland's own Eamon Burke, who's our Technical Services and Pre-Sales Manager. So before we start, there's a couple of bits of housekeeping. Just want to let you know there will be a recorded archive made available at this event. Also, you can submit a question at any stage using the Q&A platform on the platform. We will address any questions at the end. If we don't get to cover any questions, I will be in contact after the event. So just before we start, I'd like to give you a brief background on Techland, sort of who we are, our history, and some of our key vendors. So Techland have been around since 1983. We cut our teeth on the emerging VoIP market. Microsoft came to the UC scene around 15 years ago. Since then, Techland have been heavily involved as a value-added distributor, working closely with our trusted partners. Some started with as little as 2 or 3 employees, and are now some of the largest unified communications companies in the world. So as a company, we are technical, we're quite hands-on. We understand our vendor products extremely well. We can assist at all stages of the sales cycle. So that's pre-sales and design, product and services quotations, any shipping requirements, and most importantly, supporting the product. So we offer help desk level 1 and level 2 across our portfolio. And it's worth mentioning that we aren't a broadliner. We only focus on a handful of key vendors. We take great pride in understanding and owning the products from a technical perspective. This is reflected through our awards and our industry recognition. So you can move on to the next slide, please. So before we begin today's main presentation, just wanted to let you know some of the services available from Techland. So if we have a look bottom left, we have ForgeServe by Swoop Datacom. This is our provisioning and management for SIP phone endpoints. Top left, we've got Clarify by Oak Innovation. This is our compliant recording and analytics for Microsoft Teams. And of course, center left, we have Ribbon Communications. So that's the core carrier grade SBC-5000-7000 series, or the virtualized suite cores. There's the enterprise SBCs in the form of the SBC-1000s, 2000s appliance, and also the suite light virtualized versions of those. We've got Ribbon EdgeMark, Intelligent Edge, for future-proofing SIP trunking and unified communications deployments, and the EdgeView service control management and Ribbon Protect, offering analytics and security across the network. And obviously, Ribbon Connect, which is what we will be presenting today. So if I could just quickly divert your attention to the right of the screen, just like to highlight Techland's value-added services. So Ribbon Connect is supported by Ribbon for Ribbon accredited partners, but for any partners that don't have sufficient support structure in place, Techland offer a support overlay facility to provide support services on your behalf. So with that in mind, I think it's time to get on with the main presentation. I'm going to pass you over to my colleague, Eamon. Over to you, Eamon.
Great, yeah, thanks, Daniel. So Ribbon will touch on premise and cloud-based SBC deployment options for direct routing. But if you've decided on a subscription-based service, why would you go with Ribbon Connect over another, specifically by a carrier or an MSP? With Ribbon Connect, you bring your own SIP trunks to the service, whereas a carrier ties you into their SIP trunks. So BYO means you remain in control of the DDIs and your own tariffs. Many providers also only offer a UK service, whereas Ribbon's is a global offer. So this can be important where you've got customers in other regions as well as just the UK. Another benefit is the Ribbon Connect portal, which allows quick provisioning and troubleshooting capabilities. So it allows you to view the SIP call dialogues, call logs, and also the Azure sync logs, so you're able to troubleshoot basic issues. Ribbon Connect can also integrate with your PBX, so you can give users the Teams experience without having to remove or change your existing PBX or trunk setup. It's the perfect way to start a Teams trial or a PBX to Teams migration as well. And lastly, the key points are flexibility. Connect has no minimum contract term. It's easy to scale up and down, and it's also quick and easy to set up. As a service is billed monthly, there's no minimum term and no setup or activation costs. So you can forget those multi-year tie-ins. You are free to scale the service up and down to meet your demand, which is very useful and cost efficient for an enterprise with seasonal staff demands. For example, a university could scale up during admissions clearing and then scale back down after that's over. Service activation is fast, automated, and done through the Ribbon Connect portal. There's no waiting for an engineer to configure your service in the back end. It's all done real time and automatically via APIs and orchestrators in the back end. So that's me. Now I will hand over to Kevin Baines at Ribbon to continue.
So, Kevin, the most famous words ever spoken.
You're on mute. I just spotted that. Yeah. Anyway, just very briefly. So a good comedy start. But anyway, good afternoon. Good to meet you all. I think I've met most of the people on the call today, but just in case you haven't, my name is Kevin Baines, and I'm responsible for Ribbon's indirect business for EMEA. Just wanted to give you a very brief sort of reminder, I guess, for a lot of you in terms of who Ribbon are. And I think it's important to, I guess, re-emphasize why we're even qualified to make the statements that we're making about the UC and the voice market. So, excuse me. If you look at the experience that we've had as a voice company, and that's really the fundamentals of our heritage. You know, you have companies such as Nortel, such as ECI, who date back to the 1960s, who are driving the voice knowledge, voice experience, and really the 5 nines capability that we've managed to develop into our edge portfolio, which is what we'll be talking about today. In terms of top right hand side, obviously we invested in a company or purchased a company called Anova Data, and that was a few years back now, and that product set has evolved into what you will probably know as Ribbon Protect today, to address the fraud and the analytics side of the business. You then got the Edgewater portfolio, so edge boxes which sit within the customer prem to give you that application prioritization, but also the 4G and the 5G failover capability, and then the more recent acquisition of ECI, which we purchased last March, which gives us access to the optical transport space, an area that we've been particularly successful in with a lot of the multinational carriers, but also the critical infrastructure companies. Just very briefly, $800 million worth of revenue. I always like to apply the so what question to that, and why is that relevant for you? Well, that's relevant for you because it means we're still putting a significant amount of money into our research and development for our products globally. And that research and development actually extends also to the relationship that we have with Microsoft, and the importance that we put on the Teams portfolio to make sure that any new innovative releases that come out of Microsoft specifically for Teams, and let's face it, that's happening quite a lot these days due to the level of innovation that's going to the products, that we make sure that our SBCs, excuse me, work first time, on time, every time. Next slide, please. So this just gives you some perspective for those who aren't aware of, nearly our, nearly 15-year or 14-year relationship with Microsoft, way back to when some of you will recall the business that NET, or Network Equipment Technologies, were actually driving in the gateway business way back in 2017. Pleased to say that business has evolved pretty rapidly, as has our relationship that we've developed with Microsoft, and we feel very well qualified, very well experienced, particularly with some of the partners sitting around this virtual call who you'll know have first-hand experience of our capability, not just from a product set, but also from an engineering set, but also the capability that Techland as a value ribbon distributor bring to the table. So what I will say is that I'm particularly excited about the Ribbon Connect opportunity. I think it gives you a unique opportunity, not just in terms of how you can deploy solutions in your prospective customers, but also how you can move quickly with regards to proof of concepts. So sit back, enjoy. Feel free to ask as many questions as you feel appropriate. It's a very new model for Ribbon, but one that I'm hoping you'll find a lot of value in, and you'll be very successful in as you progress throughout the course of this year. And I'll hand over to Mr. Zweig.
Thanks very much, Kevin. Good afternoon, everyone. So one of the reasons we're all here is because we've all probably seen the numbers or felt the impact of what's happened in 2020 in terms of the tremendous growth in Teams. As of October, Microsoft says that about 115 million daily active users on Teams. That's roughly 100 million new users in 12 months. We've all been in this business a long time. We've never seen any growth like that. However, what's interesting and very relevant for all of us is only about 10% of those organizations, and that's a US number, but we've recently talked to Microsoft in the last few days, and they tell us that's a fair representation worldwide, that only about 10% of those customers have started to use direct routing or enabled Teams calling. So what that basically means is we have this massive new pool of users in Teams, and 90% of them are still able or willing, or whatever the right term would be, to set up Teams calling. So what this webinar is really about is our Ribbon Connect solution, which we believe fundamentally makes it easier for you all to create a solution right now to get into this marketplace. Because what we're seeing is we're already seeing CIOs and even the CEOs reach out and try and figure out, I've got this huge base of trained users. How can I leverage this solution to add more value? How can I cut my costs in traditional PBX by creating this solution? And it's our belief that if you all don't engage with your customers, someone else will. And it's directly tied in to what our own survey data has shown. We asked customers, what collaboration tool have you been using during the pandemic? And if you look, almost half are using some sort of a Microsoft solution, right? And the other roughly third are using Zoom, which we also have solutions for, by the way. But think about it, roughly half are on Microsoft solutions. So that makes them ideally suited to move into a Teams calling environment. And I hit on it. Look at the growth curve that we've seen over the last 12 months with Teams. There's nothing else quite like it out there. I mean, just look at this, 300,000 ratings on the App Store for their mobile app. I mean, what can you think of that has that kind of growth? We've in the telecom business, we can't probably think of any telecom application that has 300,000 downloads, let alone 300,000 ratings. Now, just kind of as a level set, I always like to cover these because I'll use these terms as we go forward. Microsoft 365, that's just Microsoft's new name for Office 365. So the usual, grouping that Microsoft has of PowerPoint, Word, all the piece parts. Of course, Teams is a piece of Microsoft 365. Teams comes with all of the packages. However, in order to get the PBX services to work, you have to have a Microsoft phone system license. That's a per user per month license. Occasionally people think, well, there must be a way to buy that as like an enterprise-wide license. You can't. It is per user per month. I guess you'd say the easiest way to get it is Microsoft includes it, rolls the phone system license into their E5 packages. But if you have one of their lower packages like E3 or E1, it is an additional fee. I think the MSRP on it is, in the US anyways, is $8, so it's probably £6 or £7 for you all in the UK. That has to be there, or you can't enable PSTN connectivity. And for those who aren't familiar with the term, or all Microsoft Direct Routing really means, it's just Microsoft's name for SIP trunking. So in order to enable SIP trunking to connect to Microsoft's PBX system, you have to have a phone system license. So what do you ultimately need to get started with Teams. So I think I hit on a bunch of them, which is obviously you need the licenses, you need a PSTN connection. Now Microsoft does have these calling plans. I'm sure people have heard of them, but the price points out there, roughly about £10 a month, are not, they're not really feasible for anything but the smallest business. If you have more than 10 or 12 users, you start to do the math and you realize, wow, Microsoft's charges for PSTN connectivity are way more than I could get if I pull a typical SIP trunk in from any major provider in the UK or anywhere in Europe. The other thing you're going to need is you have to do Teams configuration, and this shouldn't be overlooked because there are a bunch of knobs and dials you have to turn in order to get Teams to turn on the PBX services. And one of the things we'll talk about today is how we can actually use Ribbon Connect to do that for you. And then you have the option of adding some sort of a monitoring and analytics tool, which is never a bad idea. And as a reseller, it's a way to add value on top of what you sell today. So one of the things that's important to appreciate about direct routing is that Microsoft requires a session border controller in order to get connectivity to the PSTN. And the reason they do that is actually pretty rational, which is that the SBC provides a wire speed level of inspection and encryption of all the media traffic. It also helps prevent denial of service attacks. And last but not least, it provides interoperability. So we all know that in theory, a SIP trunk from Gamma, a SIP trunk from BT, and a SIP trunk from Colt should all be the same. But we also know from our real world lives that there's always little tweaks that need to occur to get every provider's trunks to connect just right. And as a result of that, the SBC really sits there. It has the knobs and dials to make sure that you get the right level of connectivity. So if you're Microsoft, fundamentally what you recognize is, hey, I don't want to be blamed every time there's a problem. So they've put this, you can almost think of the SBC as an abstraction layer for them, where they're able to use that to not only to protect their Teams environment, but also to solve those interoperability issues that would otherwise create a support call. And the other thing that the SBC does in a Teams migration is it can kind of serve as the glue, right? Because there are other things that customers inevitably want to connect. People have things like analog stations, they have legacy PBXs, they have existing contact centers, they may have some sort of failover to an analog or digital trunk, elevator phones, door phones, the phones out in the parking lot. All those kinds of things are scenarios where an SBC can be used as a bridge to connect the solutions together. And from a Ribbon perspective, we ultimately have three models that you can use. We have the traditional hardware model, which many of you know, things like our SBC 1000 and 2000. And obviously the benefit in that environment is the fact that we give you the physical ports on those. So if you do need to use that analog or digital legacy device, we can connect it. The other thing that's important to appreciate about that design is that kind of reflects the legacy model of dial tone going into the premises or going into the data center and then bouncing back up to the cloud. More and more, what we see happening though, is that we see customers saying, if I don't have any phone equipment down, I don't have any PBX equipment down in the premises, what exactly do I need the SIP trunk to go down there for? Or why does it have to take a pit stop in Staines in order to get back into a cloud in London? So what they're saying is, hey, maybe I'll just let the service provider drop the SIP trunk right into the cloud for me. I'll avoid the potential risk of, say, a power outage or somebody in a backhoe coming along and dinging up the cable outside my office. And that's one of the reasons we've done things like create our SBC Suite Lite, which will run right inside the Azure or AWS cloud, because we recognize that customers want that. But what we see happening more and more, and the reason we're here to really position Ribbon Connect with you today, is because we see customers going even a step beyond that and saying, the reason why I'm so interested in Teams as my phone system is because I want to get out of the business of managing stuff. I don't want to be in the IT business anymore. I want somebody to deliver a turnkey service to me. Just give it to me on a per seat per month basis. It's easy. I want to, if I got 50 Teams users, I want to have 50 seats of a solution that provides the SBC services. And so that's exactly what Ribbon Connect is all about. But in addition to that basic set of SBC services, we've added on a whole nother set of layers, and we're going to talk about each of these, but we've added a SIP PBX integration service, and this is really important for those of you out there who have existing practices with a Mitel or a 3CX or Asterix or whatever, where you say, hey, I don't want to give up initially all of my PBX business on day one to move to Teams. I want a migration strategy so I can hang on to my maintenance revenue for the next few years while Teams takes on some of these roles. And the other thing we've layered on top is a Microsoft Teams integration service. And the reason we've done that is because we recognize not everybody out there is an expert on Teams, right? If you've used Teams PowerShell, it's not the world's easiest thing to use. You know, actually, in some regards, it's surprising how legacy it is, considering how much development power Microsoft has. You would think maybe you'd get a little more seamless integration. But what we've done to make up for those things is we've created this end-to-end workflow portal that we give you guys access to. And basically, if you look at the portal, what you'll see is that you can just enter a user's name in, or you can connect via Active Directory. You enter the IP address to the SIP trunks. You push a couple of buttons, we actually sync the whole thing together for you so that you get the SIP trunks with the right DIDs, the right users, and the right Teams configuration so it all works. And when you're done, again, monthly bill to you per seat per user. You bring the SIP trunks, you reuse the customer SIP trunks. We're not trying to get into that business and take that revenue from you. There's no minimums, there's no usage commitments. Sign up for as many seats as you need for that environment, but it's built on our, you know, what Kevin touched on, our decades of experience with SBC security, and it's no hardware, no software, nothing for you guys to invest in. Literally, you can sign up and start selling this in a few days' time. That sounds like hyperbole coming from the guy with the PowerPoints, but that's really how this is designed. And I touched on the portal piece. It literally, you can go in here. We're actually even going to make this easy over the next few weeks. We're actually starting to add more wizards to this. So there's even less and less sort of connect the dots on your side of the equation. So again, super easy and quick to get this deployed, even for you know, somebody who's not necessarily comfortable with Teams because maybe their background is in you know, traditional PBX environments. Let me just talk for a second kind of how it works. I've got a build in this slide. I'm just going to kind of bounce through it quickly. So basically what happens is we have two models for how Ribbon Connect works. The basic model, what we call a trunk user, is just the idea of, hey, we have a user who wants to get out to the PSTN. They don't have any existing PBX environment. Greenfield, you might call it, right? Where I just need my DIDs connected into Teams and I need to put that SBC in the middle. So in that environment, literally all you would do is go up and configure a PSTN provider, you know, some IP addresses and connect the user to it. As soon as you do that, Ribbon Connect will do the configuration and the Teams user will have access to PSTN calling native inside Teams. We don't mess around with any of the experience, or we don't touch that piece. We're just there to provide the trunks. Now, what's more interesting probably for a lot of you on a call is we also have a way that you can integrate with an existing SIP-based PBX. So at the beginning, what's interesting about this is that we leave the customer's dial tone connected into their existing PBX. We actually kind of use that as a linchpin to make the whole thing work, and it's interesting. So at one level, you look at it and say, okay, it looks just like normal. There's dial tone going to the existing PBX. Customers' PBX phones are still there. But what we do that's really interesting is we actually use our service, Ribbon Connect, and we actually register to the SIP PBX as a soft phone into that PBX. So now we're actually using the PBX to do simultaneous ring or SIP forking. Once we take that call in, we then sort of fool Microsoft. And Microsoft, so the PBX thinks it's talking to a soft phone. And Microsoft Teams, we tell Teams, hey, here's a DID number. So Teams sees any activity going on as a inbound or outbound call from us. And the reason we do all that is so that ultimately what can happen is we can have a PBX user, and they can, when a call comes in, it'll actually ring on their PBX phone. It'll also ring on their Teams extension, and vice versa. If they go off hook, it'll actually go back through the existing PBX. And if there's a PBX user out there who's looking to see if Bob Smith is on the phone, they'll actually see, oh, you know, Bob's busy lamp field is lit up because Bob's on the phone. And conversely, you know, if they dial their extension internally, it'll ring Bob's PBX phone. It'll also ring Bob's Teams client. So it's a really tight level of integration relative to the traditional SBC model, where all you can do is SIP forking off a CO line. We're doing this basically at the station side, and it's a big differentiator relative to a lot of other solutions.
So Greg, just very quickly, one of the questions, I'm sorry to interrupt, it says from Simon here, can the portal be used to configure the customer's call routing requirements for Teams, such as setting up IVRs, call queues, and auto attendant?
To some extent, yes. But it's not going to be able to manage necessarily. It knows what the first point of contact is, but it's not going to be able to. If you wanted to create a set of strings of activity, that would be something you might have to do either in the existing PBX or in Teams. So if you wanted to, for instance, set up an automated attendant in Teams, or you wanted to continue to use the existing automated attendant in the PBX, you would have to do that outside the portal. Other questions, Andrew?
One just popped up, says, we're a hosted service provider. Do you offer a proof of concept?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we do. And I'll just because he or she asked the question, I'll sort of skip ahead mentally here and say that there's a couple of things that we do that are really nice when it comes to proof of concepts. So we actually have proof of concepts built into the portal. So we can Techland can set you up as a customer and assign you a short-term license to try it out. And it's all automated, so you'll actually be set up as I guess you might call it as a trial reseller. And you can use the service for 30 or 60 days, decide for yourself whether it's something that you like. And if you're happy with that, you can go ahead and just convert those licenses over and continue to use it internally. And we offer the same kind of trial, we'll talk about it at the end, for end users. So once you're set up as a reseller, and I'm sure everyone here is going to sign up. Once you're set up, you'll be able to do your own trials. You don't need to place a call to Techland. You don't need to ask somebody from Ribbon to get you a trial license. It's automatically set up. All you have to do is set up the customer as a customer inside the portal, assign some users. They get a 30-day license. At the end of the 30 days, it expires. You don't have to do any cleanup or run around and try to remember. If the customer thinks they're going to use this trial for 100 days for free, they're not. At 30 days, if they don't start paying, or they don't ask for a paid license, it turns itself off. So it's a pretty slick solution. Now, I touched on this idea of enabling PBX migrations, and I know that this is important to a lot of you because you have existing revenue streams from maintenance. So as I said, what's really nice about Ribbon Connect is we can give you a way of giving customers the best of both worlds. We know that you're probably getting phone calls and emails today with people saying, you know, I have a CEO, I have 10 people who are remote, have an existing Mitel. I'd really like a way to give those 10 or 12 people access to Teams calling, but I'm not necessarily ready to migrate entirely to Teams for a whole variety of reasons. Ribbon Connect is a perfect solution for this because we can integrate just those, 10 or 12 users. I talked about that idea of a pilot program. What's better than saying to somebody, hey, you know what, let me get you set up. I'll get you 5 licenses. Why don't you let those 5 people try it out and see whether this is something that adds value for you all? That's a great way. You keep your existing revenue stream. You don't lose connectivity to that customer in the sense that they're out shopping to see what other partner they can get to help them with their problem. And it's a great way for the customer, they get a low risk way of sort of getting their feet wet, right? And if a year later or 2 years later, there's a process to decommission that PBX and move all the teams, you're in the driver's seat to collect that revenue. And I touched on this as well, which is we don't mess around with the native calling experience in Teams. And I think this is really important. We've all seen over the last year how hard it is to get people to learn things. And people have had to learn a lot. What's nice about this is once they get involved in using Teams, it's the complete native experience. They can use all the help in Teams. They can watch videos on YouTube. We're not touching any of that experience. So it's a completely native experience. As Microsoft makes updates to Teams, and we've seen they've done a ton of changes in the last year, and they'll keep making changes. Every one of those applies. We're not breaking something to add something. And of course, it's incredibly easy to order and use this. I don't know of too many solutions that have a simpler ordering process. There's 2 SKUs, right? There's a PBX user or a trunk user. We charge a premium if you want the PBX integration, less or so if you use the trunk user SKU. As I said, it's a per month, per user basis. Right? You guys have access to your own billing reports. There's no minimum, no commitments. The customer doesn't have to sign up for 36 months, neither do you. If somebody has 100 licenses and they have a change in their organization, they only need 75, they can just go ahead and drop the 25 off and their bill will go down the next month. The only real optional licenses, we do offer a white label option. So the portal is traditionally branded Ribbon Connect. If you said, hey, I really would like my customers and I would like to have my own logo on the portal, we can add that for a monthly fee. It's not big pounds, excuse me. I touched on this as well, the instant customer trials. I think I hit all the high points. It's limited to 30 days. What's great about this is it puts the hammer on customers. We've all been there. Customer says, oh, I absolutely want to try it. I want to get using it. And you call them the next week and they say, oh, I haven't gotten to it yet. And you call them the next week and they say, oh, Bill's been busy, out, missing, whatever the case may be, on a desert island. And time just goes by and suddenly you're at 100 days and the customer still hasn't decided whether or not they're going to do anything or not. This is 30 days. They use it or lose it. If they decide on day 31 they haven't tried it, well, they can pay for it. Again, we're not talking about we're talking something that's a couple of pounds a month. If they're not interested in paying that to try it, then they're probably not interested as a customer. But it's all done by you. You don't have to beg, borrow, and plead for trial licenses or spend 3 days trying to catch somebody in email to get a license. Yeah, you just go inside your own portal environment, create the customer, add the users. You can have up to 25 per customer, which is plenty to try it out.
Hey, Greg, there's a couple of additional questions coming in.
Sure.
One from Mark saying, is there a minimum version requirement for our hosted Asterisk cloud platform?
Oh, that's a great question. I can't answer that off the top of my head, but he's a great straight man for two points. One is that we have a whole knowledge base already set up for this, and that includes all of the testing we've done with the various PBX products. And we have, we can show you what we have in there. There's documents that go through what's been tested and the release. We also have a process in there. If you find something that hasn't been tested and you want us to test it, we have a process to get that tested out. Of course, you can always try. The reality is that it's not overly complicated. If the platform supports SIP soft phones and simultaneous ring, there's probably about a 99% chance that this will work with it, because the soft phone functions that we use are incredibly simple. I would suspect that any version of Asterisk probably since about, I don't know, geez, probably 2007 or 2008, probably would work without issue.
And I think, Greg, to add to that, we can work closely with the partners, so Anna or yourself, in terms of getting it on a bench, testing it, and see what features we can make work together.
Yeah, and Andrew has all this stuff in his basement too, so he's ready to roll.
Absolutely.
Other questions?
Just one that Andrew's already answered, but just for the wider audience. Will your service work with companies that have non-enterprise Microsoft 365 licenses, i.e. business premium?
Well, as long as the I guess the question would be, it has to be on 360. It has to be a 365 environment.
And it has to have the phone system license as well, doesn't it?
Correct.
So one question from Mark is, likewise, is there a minimum Microsoft Office 365 license version required?
No, other than it has to have phone system. If
E1, yeah, E1, E3, E5. So as long as it's phone system across any of those,
yeah.
it works. Yeah.
And to be honest, there's a litany of one-off Microsoft licenses that we come across, and there's special versions for education and so on. So you need Teams as part of the package, and you need a phone system license. Those are the requirements.
Okay. And it says here, just quickly, there's one more question which I think is quite applies quite well here. There is nothing for the resellers to create in Azure servers, etc. This is purely a license model we subscribe for our customers to use, correct?
That is absolutely correct. You are not installing software. You are not installing hardware. You don't end up with a contract with Azure. You don't end up with some sort of a per session type scenario, or you don't end up with some sort of permanent license for a piece of equipment. It is a per seat, per month deal. And that's why I said literally, you can be up and running with this in a couple days time, because all you need to do is set yourself up, ring Techland, get yourself set up as a partner, and start pointing trunks at it. That's literally, I think it kind of sounds sometimes like, oh, there's got to be a hitch, but really there's not. That's pretty much how it works. Any other questions, Andy? All right. Well, so the last piece of the puzzle really here, I just want to kind of touch on. I think we've hit all of this, but from our perspective, Ribbon Connect helps solve a lot of these common barriers that we hear customers talk about. We touched on it, right? They have an existing PBX, they've got a lot of money tied up in phones. Maybe they have an existing, I don't know, BT UC contract that they have to hang out for another year and a half before they can extract themselves from that. No problem. They can use this for just a few of their employees if that's what's important to them. They can migrate over time. They can leave somebody in an environment if they have a manufacturing environment where they say, look, I'm not going to give all these people Teams accounts. That's fine. You use it the way it fits into your business environment. Use it with your sort of business process. If you have an existing service provider contract, you have a long-term contract with a Gamma or BT or whomever, we're not touching that. We're not part of that. Literally, all you're doing is pointing Ribbon Connect at the customer's existing service provider environment. If you have the ability to sell them something new, by all means, go do it. But we're not in the middle of that. And we're also not in the middle of their contact center investment. So one of the big things that concerns people is they have something already deployed for contact center. They have agents trained. They don't want to, upset the apple cart. There's no reason you should have to do that. And the same goes for legacy device or system integration solutions. We can give you ways to keep all of that connected. So fundamentally, our goal here is to make it easier for you all to, when a customer calls or you call on them, we're going to make it easier for you to sell a Teams environment. And I think I hit all of these except for the fact that we have, this is a fully managed service. We have a NOC in Prague, so we have it in region 24/7. You don't have to call the US. You don't have to worry about somebody waking up to get support. There's a 24/7 operation center. It's fully managed. It's our people. You don't have to do anything other than come up with a way to connect with customers and use your expertise to sell your value-added services on top of what we deliver. So with that, Daniel, do you want to just chime in for a second and talk a little bit about how folks can connect with Techland?
Yeah, of course. Thanks very much, Greg. That's a very interesting presentation. So yeah, I mean, we've got a couple of call to actions and next steps. So firstly, I just want to reiterate that we will be sharing the recorded archive of today's presentation. That'll be coming out via email probably tomorrow. The important thing is, I think, with Ribbon Connect is to experience the platform for yourself to see the benefits. So do reach out to Techland to set up your free 30-day trial. So that can be for yourself, that can be for your customers as well. And also worth reiterating that for existing Ribbon partners that have joined today, there is already training available on the Ribbon Partner Portal. So you can enable yourself, get yourself certified to sell and implement the solution. So I think with that, I was going to check with Andrew, see if you've had any more questions coming in.
I guess just briefly, just one point I wanted to highlight on the certification. Because the service is coming out of the Ribbon Cloud, the accreditation or the training is nowhere near as extensive as you perhaps think it may be. So it's not onerous, it doesn't take up a huge amount of time. There's a number of courses, they're video based so that you can do them as and when you feel you have time to do them. One is basically about selling. So how do you sell it? How do you position it? Much like we've discussed today. And then the other is based on understanding the portal, and then obviously how to raise a ticket if necessary. So the whole concept behind it is to keep it as simple as possible for those partners that either want to do quick and easy POCs or go down the route of focusing, as as we said earlier, focusing on that sales broker piece and not having to invest a huge amount on the engineering side. So hopefully that's helpful. Sorry, Daniel, I'll hand back to you.
Oh, no worries. Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, just to sort of reiterate on that point, really, I did the training myself and passed, so it can't be that difficult. So, yeah, Andrew, have we had any other questions coming in?
Yes, so we've held a few back because it's been very busy. So what availability are you offering? 99.99%. As a reseller partner, would I have access to the SBC logs for troubleshoot purposes?
Oh, that's a great question. You don't get access to the SBC logs per se. And the reason for that is because we've put this whole portal environment in order to abstract all that complexity, so people don't have to get dragged down into that. But two things. One, we absolutely have a logging function that we provide with call trace and those kinds of tools. And in addition to that, as I mentioned, we give you access to our tier 2 and tier 3 support. So you're not, if that doesn't meet, if you can't get what you need out of the portal, you can escalate up to us and we can help.
Okay, and one from Adam here. And you provide a public IP address for the SIP trunk?
It is normally what we require for the SIP trunk is a dynamic SIP trunk as opposed to a static IP address.
Yeah, and a great one here is the service available in India?
Yes, you can get it from India. That's a really good question, actually. I didn't touch on that. We did touch on the fact that it's worldwide. Right now, we've rolled this out in 6 data centers worldwide, all Azure data centers. We do plan to put it in more. So I didn't put a chart up. I apologize of where we have data centers today. You can come out of several different locations and get access via India. The only issue, like anything, is making sure that the latency and jitter and so on is reasonable. But you generally speaking today, connectivity into the Azure data centers is pretty impressive. And if there's a region that we don't have access to and we can define a business need, we'll absolutely add this in. We've already talked about expanding it.
Okay, Another one here is, must an Office 365 E3 customer purchase the Microsoft telephone license once per month, and is it system-wide purchase or per user purchase?
It's absolutely, the phone system license is absolutely per seat, per month. So if you want to be able to talk, if you're a Microsoft 365 user and you want to use Teams to talk to the PSTN, you either have to have a bundled license like the E5 that includes phone system license, or you have to pay the additional premium on a per seat per month basis. And I said that's $8 US, so I assume that's roughly £6 probably a month extra to get that. Now, keep in mind, big company, that's retail price. Big company's going to negotiate a better deal than that with Microsoft.
Okay. One here is geo-redundancy. This is often a mandatory requirement for some organizations. I think you kind of covered that in terms of the Azure and the way that we deploy it in Azure, and certainly there's an element of geo-redundancy there anyway, isn't there? There
is. And the other thing to keep in mind, if for some reason you have a customer who says, hey, I need something slightly different, there's always the option of going back to a traditional model. We have things like the SBA, Survivable Branch Appliance, that Microsoft makes available. They only make that available today in hardware. But as we move forward, we're looking at ways to enable that inside of Ribbon Connect as well. The tough thing is if a customer says, hey, I need something for WAN resiliency, the only way you're going to do that is to have a device on premises, because there's no miracle, right? Once it's up in the cloud, if it didn't get there, making it resilient there doesn't really help.
Really good one here. If the reseller is providing the SIP trunk to Azure from the Bring Your Own SIP Trunk service, where the SBC Connect is, are there additional egress charges we should know about, i.e. Azure charges?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
No, there's no additional charges there at all, which is great. And one final one, if we have a requirement to keep customer calls within the UK, AWS service for DPIA requirements, can the solution be co-load in the UK only?
Well, there is a data center, I believe, in the UK. I'd have to, I wouldn't want to answer that without sort of looking carefully at it, to be honest.
Yeah,
I'm not going to answer that. I don't know, Andrew, if you have a view. You spend more time.
Yeah, so the solution I understand is based in both East and West, and you can, with restrictions, add that. So if there is a limitation to break out of a national boundary, that can be certainly configured into it. But we'd certainly just have to look at that and work with you on that.
Yeah, I'd want to go back to our team and ask the question before I answer to a question that has that kind of legal implications.
Yeah. And that kind of concludes most of the questions, I believe. It's been a bit busy, but all good.
Excellent. Well, hopefully everyone enjoyed the session, and Daniel, I'm sure you'll wrap it up here, but I hope folks follow up with you to get more information.
Yes, yeah, thanks, Greg. Yeah, so just to reiterate, really, if you have any questions relating to today's webinar or any in general, then obviously do contact Techland. I'd like to thank everyone who presented today. It's much appreciated. And that was it, really. So have a good afternoon, everyone. Thank you.